Hello, everyone. Welcome to From Head to Heart and Home with your host, Shanda Ceretti, certified life coach, professional. She is great at everything, and Carla Center. I am a subconscious healer. So,
Also great at everything.
thank you, Shanda. So, we are excited to share our discussion with you today, for you to listen in and just hear our conversation that's authentic and from the heart. We start our conversation right before we hit record. We decide on the topic, and today we're going to talk about feedback. And I'm excited about this because when somebody hears feedback, they're thinking, oh, somebody's just going to tell me about something. Feedback, there are so many things that are feedback, right, Shanda?
Oh yeah.
And things that we consider compliments, criticism, it's all feedback,
Mhm.
not positive, not negative. It's all feedback. So I'm going to let you jump in, Shanda.
Okay. So, like Carla said, this is a really exciting topic, and probably for a lot of people who are listening, this might even be a topic that is new, which is even more fun. So, this is something that Carla and I got to dive into pretty extensively last year, which is one of the ways that we met actually, and we got to learn a whole bunch of stuff. And so feedback is literally happening around us all the time, whether we acknowledge it, see it, hear it, feel it, it doesn't matter. And the interesting thing about feedback, like Carla had mentioned, is that we perceive it to be positive or negative, right? So, for example, if we are considering a compliment to be feedback, compliment is something that is positive, right? Or if we are perceiving criticism, we are perceiving that as to be a negative thing. But I think what we want to offer today is that feedback is neither, right? It's neutral. So it doesn't have a positive intention or a negative intention attached to it until we make it mean that for ourselves, right? Because somebody could be intending to give you a compliment, but you might perceive it to be kind of backhanded or criticism, right? So it's funny how we put our own spin on what that feedback means to us, depending on where we're at in our lives, maybe some of our limiting beliefs or insecurities, or where we feel confident and where we feel proud of ourselves, right? So I want to know what you want to build onto that. And then we're just going to let this thing take off like normal.
Okay, absolutely. So one of the things also is it's not only what you perceive. People could be firing. Shanda and I chose to be fired at with feedback.
Yeah.
Fired at with feedback. And you only catch what rings true to you.
Hmm.
So I volunteered to have 5 people in front of over 100 people fire feedback to me. And for somebody who liked to hide in the background, and that was me, that was a big deal.
Hmm.
And so the thing is my perception of people giving me the feedback was way different than other people's. What I remembered and I glommed onto was totally different. So I kept getting the woman who and she was the our trainer. She had thrown at me that I was a scared little girl. And like I heard that. And one of the gentlemen, and the only reason I know this is somebody else told me, threw at me that I was not intelligent and went with that. And I did not hear a word he said because it did not ring true for me. Because what I've always depended on was my intelligence. So for somebody to tell me I was unintelligent, it just bounced right off. So when we get feedback, if we even acknowledge it, it's because somewhere it rings true for us. So like Shanda was saying, somebody could be complimenting you, but if it triggers something in you that you feel negatively about yourself about then you are going to go with it. But if it's something that somebody says to you, it does not trigger you at all,
Hmm.
you most likely are just going to let it go and you won't remember it later.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because the world, the universe, everything around us, our experience is mirroring everything back to us. So, that being said, and this is going to be a trip for most people, I hope it is, because I remember when I learned all this stuff too, I was like, whoa, right? Through coaching and through leadership and such. And it's the idea that whether it's positive or negative is doesn't matter here.
Right.
People, situations, circumstances, everything is mirroring back information to us. We are the only person creating our life, right? So we are actually, whether you want to believe this or not, but we are actually the person creating our own reality, right? So it's funny that this is coming up actually, because this has been a theme too with my clients lately. And I love it so much, because I always like to say that whenever you see certain qualities and traits or experiences in your environment that keep kind of happening, it's it's the universe telling you that either this is something that wants to be worked on, right? This is something that's ready to be healed. So it keeps presenting you with that opportunity. So if I'll be a little bit more specific, because that's kind of like really wishy-washy out there. But let's say I'm noticing like there's a lot of hatred in the world. And I'm like, wow, I'm hearing it on the radio, I'm seeing it on TV. Not that I do those things, but I'm seeing it, in people in my community. I'm experiencing it maybe even at home, whatever it is. It's an opportunity to pause and stop and ask yourself, how or where in my life am I showing up in this way? How am I creating hate or hatred? How am I contributing to this? Because we're all creating all the time, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, like we talked about in a previous episode, right? So we're either manifesting or counter manifesting. But when we see these things that kind of rub us a certain way, right? It kind of like, ooh, I don't really like that. We're noticing it for a reason, because we're being called to heal that very thing.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. And it is a mirror. The first thing that if somebody's saying something to you and it really is triggering to you, I would take a look at, why is this triggering to me? Where am I seeing this? If somebody has, like, you feel like you can't make it past something, where are you limiting yourself in your life? You are getting mirrors. If you feel alone, same thing. Where are you cutting yourself off? And people, because you glom onto the things, your interactions with people, it's feedback, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
As feedback isn't only verbal, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if you're feeling alone, are you isolating yourself? Are there people that you could have that connection with that you're avoiding, and you are staying with the people that connection feels hard to keep you in that same space? Everything. It's If you look at it as neutral, then you're not going to seek validation or take other people's feedback as something negative, right? If you stay right there in that neutral plane, it gives you so many more opportunities to really understand yourself and grow and heal.
Yeah. Yes. I like what you're saying there so much, because the feedback is neutral until we make it mean something positive or negative.
Yeah.
Feedback is also, sorry, like you said, the opportunity to grow. So here's the caveat to all of this. We get to learn how to open ourselves up to receiving feedback, right? From a place of neutrality. So really, and it's going to take work, you guys, but really working on not making that thing mean positive or negative, but only simply making it mean opportunity to grow. Okay. That said, we also have to understand that providing feedback to other people is a gift. And when we withhold that information, whether it's what we're perceiving to be positive or negative, when we withhold that feedback, we're also withholding the opportunity for that other person to grow as well, right? So feedback is something that's always happening, right? And it's something that allows us to keep moving forward, to keep growing and create bigger and better things in our lives. So if you don't have people in your life who provide you with feedback naturally, right? They want to share things with you, then I would start asking them to, if they're willing to give you feedback, right? So, and not only asking like the positive things, like, hey, I've done this in the past. I've asked my closest friends to be like, what would you say from your experience of me, right? Because it's only their opinion too.
Right.
But what is your experience of me when it comes to like my top characteristic traits? Or maybe what do you think? What do you perceive to be my top three areas where I could improve?
Right.
And getting that feedback is so beautiful when you're ready to receive it from a place of neutrality and not make it mean that you're not enough, that you suck, that you need to do this work, that you blah, 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 blah. Right?
Right. And if somebody's not coming from a loving place, that also is not about you, that's about them. So if you keep it neutral and realize, excuse me, however they present it is really not about you.
Mm.
It's about them. And that helps you keep it neutral. And there's nothing wrong with, okay, I've got this feedback. It has me triggered. I need to go get centered and then process it.
Yeah.
No, allow yourself grace.
Yes. I want to say what you said about the trigger. I like this because what came up for me, I'm like, trigger equals truth. So if you're triggered by it, it's because there's truth behind it, meaning it's an area to heal, right?
Right.
I don't mean, oh, you do suck. That's not what I mean. But I mean, you're having a reaction to it because there's a limiting belief attached to it. There's an
Yes.
experience attached to it, right? So it's ouchy. It's a wound. It doesn't feel good when people poke on that, right? So trigger equals truth. Remember that equation.
Yes. Somewhere you believe when somebody says something like I was saying before, somewhere you believe, that's
Mm,
why it's this wound. Somewhere you believe what they're saying.
yeah,
And it hurts because you believe that. But if they said it to you, like if I said Shanda's eyes were brown, she
right,
wouldn't care. But if I start talking about her blue eyes, then she's going to pay attention because it rings true.
right.
So if it doesn't ring true, then we're just going to let it go.
Yeah,
But if it rings true, like Shanda was saying, trigger equals truth. There's somewhere in there you feel there's some truth to that you don't like.
yeah. And the same on the other side too, right?
Yes, yes,
There's limiting beliefs, but there's also empowering beliefs. So let's say I start complimenting Carla on like her hair. Oh, her hair is so beautiful. It's so blonde, all these things. And she's like, yeah, I do like my hair. She feels confident there. Or I'm like, Carla, you're so smart. You know all these things about like technology and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, I do. Right. So it goes both ways.
yes, yes. And with that, the you have to remember that you will look for validation
Mm,
if you're looking for the positive and you're cutting out the negative. Okay, I don't want to know anything that you say that pokes my wounds. I just want to hear the good. And so we are always seeking external validation and not trusting our own heart and soul as to who we think we are.
yeah. That's bringing up ego, right?
Oh, yeah.
When we're looking for validation and we don't want to be honest and take responsibility for some of the ways that we could improve upon, within ourselves, that is ego. Ego is like, there is nothing wrong with me. It's everything to do with the world, right? No responsibility. Versus when we're in our heart, we're like, hey, you know what? I understand that there's always opportunity for growth no matter where I am in this journey, no matter how much I've already done, how much I've gone through, right? Because growth is unlimited. There's no
Yes.
ceiling, you know? So it's about, again, like coming back to being open to receiving it, letting go of ego, and not making it mean you are or aren't something.
Right, right. And ego can happen with the positive too. If you
Yeah.
can't take compliments the
Yeah.
same way, it's the same thing as not being able to take the what you
Criticism.
perceive as criticism.
Right, right.
It's all ego. So if you can't let a compliment in, somewhere in you, it's not safe
Hmm.
to believe that about yourself.
Right. Yeah. It all comes down, like our triggers they stem from limiting beliefs, right? Like our deep, deep wounds.
Yes.
And I mean, it's fascinating sometimes how they can show up later in life in so many different ways and in so many different areas of our life. It could be, you could like, there's usually a silver lining or like a gold thread that goes through all of
Mm-hmm.
the issues, coming back to one, I'm going to say simple or basic thing that you experienced. And because of that one experience, it created a wound that, because it was left open for so long, has manifested into all of these ridiculous, painful experiences. Right.
Right.
And so,
Right.
just like healing a wound, we can heal the wounds of our psyche or of our past. Right. But it does take effort. It's not going to close by itself. We need to be conducive to that healing, right? We need to promote that healing.
Right. And if you, I was having a visual because a hologram. So if what Shanda's saying, so that thread, so it starts out with the one event, and then they just like, if you ever looked at like the crystals where they laser etch in it, and you
Yeah.
can see the hologram in the, it's the same thing. So we're just building into this container when
Mm.
we are doing that, and so that's why we keep taking in the stuff that rings true. We're sticking it into that container and we're holding it in instead of doing the healing to move forward and becoming aware.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a trigger for me. This is how I normally react to that
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
How can I do it differently so that I can grow from this?
Yeah. Love what you said. We are stacking proof. We are stacking evidence against ourselves of how this limiting belief is true,
Yes.
right? Which allows us or creates the experience of holding on to the pain, which is why it keeps coming up and we feel triggered because it's ouchy, which results in us not healing, which results in us being stuck or feeling stuck, not being stuck, feeling stuck. That is the experience, is we're unable to move forward. And it's like, okay, so let's set that stack aside. What if we can stack evidence against it,
Right.
right? Let's just change our perspective. Let's look for different feedback, or let's have a different response to the feedback. Because, like Carla was saying at the beginning, when we're picking and choosing, we're almost like filtering through the feedback,
Yes.
right? So what if we just removed our filters and just opened up to all of it and was curious about the feedback that we're receiving? Like, oh, what could this mean? Oh, what could that mean? Oh, isn't this interesting? Right?
Right. Because our subconscious does, like I've told you guys, filter out 95% or more of all the data that comes into us. So if we come instead of from our head, like Shanda and I mean that's why we call this talk from head to heart and home. If we instead of coming from our head, which is where all that filtering is coming through, come through our heart and be open, more stuff comes into us. Like I said, had somebody else not told me what this person said, it didn't even come to me because I filtered it out. It's not true to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you come from your heart, that curiosity is so alive and so open to new things coming into you, and you'll be amazed at the stuff that you see. Otherwise it keeps you, those limiting it, these, it's like sticking a bunch of screens in front of you and you're trying to see and you can barely see, and only what you make out is what you've created.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, as you're describing this, what comes up for me is like an example of, okay, people might be like, well, how is this like, how can I grasp at this or understand this in my life, right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't, maybe the concept is a little bit out there for some people, right? Everything is feedback. It's like, what? So let's look at this for an example. Let's look at driving in traffic, right? And all of a sudden you're like in traffic, like there's a traffic jam, maybe there's an accident, maybe somebody cuts you off, and then you experience like rage for a second, like road rage, right? You're like, oh my gosh, what an a-hole. I can't believe that person cut me off. And
Right.
what an idiot. He drives like blah, blah, whatever, or she, whatever. This is the opportunity of where in your life or how in your life can you create um like the opportunity to grow, right? So if you're experiencing anger, how can you grow and develop love in this area? Like maybe that person was speeding to the hospital because somebody was, I don't know, having a baby in the back seat, or maybe somebody was really sick. We don't know what is going on the other side of
Mhm.
any situation. We like to try and make meaning of it or figure it out, but we don't know. So when you have these like huge reactions to something, again, it's like the universe being like, hey, how can you work on patience? Right? How
Yes.
can you work on being more calm? How can you work on being less reactive? That's how I see it. This is how I perceive feedback. I'm like, it's a beautiful thing because, again, it's always shining a light on the areas where we tend to avoid or keep in the dark. We don't want to go there. We don't want to work on that thing. We don't want to address it, but it's inevitable. It's there. Feedback tells you time and time and time and time again, right? Oh, this one person at work drives me crazy. Oh, I can't stand it. Oh, interesting. How are you creating that? How are you
Right.
contributing to that? How do you do that in your life?
Right.
Yeah.
And what, that's why we have different perceptions too, right? Because we're all meaning makers. They're making their meanings from their stuff. The person that's driving and cut you off may not have even noticed they cut you off because they may be focused on something else. They may, for them, you might have been something that they didn't even, it didn't even register for them.
Right.
And the people in your life, they may not, the stuff that you're seeing, they may not see it at all. They could be completely blind to it, but because you're trying to make meaning, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we want, a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's the the lawyers at trials, that's what they do, is they try and create a story because we want to make a story, right?
Mm,
Everybody says stick to the facts, but we really want to make a story. That's just how we are. We're meaning makers. And so as the feedback comes in, we want to make a story of it,
yeah.
even if that story is not the reality for anybody else but us.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make meaning of it. And so as you're taking that feedback, and like Shanda's saying, okay, why is that, instead of being like the victim to what keeps coming up for you, be like, okay, why is this keep coming right here in my face? What is going on? What do I need to learn? Is there a wound that is just keep getting ripped open, and I'm just putting little band-aids on it as it's seeping out? You know, what is it? So I can really give it the attention it needs to heal.
Yeah. And the funny thing about when we create these stories too, again, when we're gathering our information to create the story, we're doing it from a place of bias, right?
Mhm.
So we delete information that we don't think is relevant or that isn't going to work in our favor, right? And this is all
Yes.
unknown, by the way. This is all subconscious. This isn't something we're like scheming up. Sometimes, sure,
Mm.
but most of the time, this is running in the background. Okay. So,
Yep.
again, having grace, it's okay. Now we're learning, we can move through these things and start to work on these things. The other thing that we do is we distort information. So
Yes.
instead of just completely deleting it or omitting it, pretending it's not there, or not, or failing to divulge the information, we distort it. So we change it a little bit for our advantage. Like, and then the other thing that we do too is we like to exaggerate. So I love this example. It's so good. It's like, how many times have you caught yourself saying, I always do this, or I never do this? That is likely not the truth. We like to exaggerate information so that our story is comes across in a certain way, right? So really honestly, I think a really cool activity would be to just start to notice where in your life you delete information, you distort and change information, and where you exaggerate information. Because I'll tell you, I'll be totally honest with you. A little vulnerable moment here. I'm like an exaggerator. So that's like, I think we all have kind of like a preference in whether we delete, distort, or alter. And mine is definitely exaggerating. I'll be like, oh my gosh, the thing was like this big, right? You know, like it was like so bright. And I'm over the top sometimes. So start to pay attention to where you do that. Because again, what Carla and I are trying to do here is we're trying to just help you kind of build tools so that you can gain this insight and awareness into your life and how you're showing up and how you're creating the things that are happening in your life. I almost said to you, but in your life.
Right. Right. Because that is, as Shanda was about to say it, the reason why she stopped is because when you have life happening to you, that means that you're taking all the feedback and you're making it all like, I have no control, which is exactly what the opposite of what Shanda was telling you. You have control over this. You get to choose
Mm.
and sit back and go. And I can be the opposite. I'll be so minimalistic about how things are until it does turn into the big thing and then blows up in my face. And an avoider.
Yeah. So, okay. So would you say that you're a deleter, a distorter, or an exaggerator?
I am most of the time a deleter.
Oh, it didn't happen. It's not there, right?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden the whole thing comes in your face and you're like overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And instead of taking it, because then overwhelm, which is how we created the filters, by the way, at some moment in our life, we were overwhelmed. Our consciousness, there are all kinds of studies that show this consciousness splits, and then you hold in the thing, that the overwhelm, and then you create something to keep yourself safe, which is why we have all of these filters, right? Because we're going to filter out anything that's not going to keep us safe. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you know so then you get overwhelmed. If you avoid it, then it's not happening, right? You're just oblivious to it. It's not happening,
Yeah.
right? At least that's your belief, but it really is happening, and eventually you have to face it. You have to face it. And the thing that I told my children is, if you choose not to learn your lesson, because I have time and time again, this is what I did. I buckled down. I pushed myself through. I was strong, got to the other side of it, right?
Mm.
Ignoring any lesson in the situation.
Mm.
And then it will come again. If you do not learn your lessons, they continuously come. Why? Because you're ignoring all of this feedback
Mm.
and you continue on your normal patterns. There's no pattern interrupt,
Mm.
and you keep following them, and all of a sudden that same stuff is there, and it provides your pattern interrupt. And are you going to push through it and ignore it, or are you going to work, okay, what can I learn from this? What is really coming to me that I have filtered out and avoided?
Yeah. Yeah. What I always love to offer people when we're talking about the avoidance tactic and how we might not really understand how detrimental it is and it can be, and all of the avoidance in general, right, in any area. But I like to compare it to my tetherball analogy. So we all know what tetherball is, right? If you don't, let me explain it. It is a metal pole. Okay, I'm going to use my pen for an example. It's a metal pole. Then you have a string that's attached to it, and there's a ball on the end of it. Okay, this is a schoolyard game that we had multiple schools growing up when I was young. I don't know if they have them anymore or not. It's a few years ago. Okay, so the game, you can play it with somebody. I think you do usually play it with somebody, but I always picture it playing by yourself. Okay, because life is kind of like a solo game, right? We're playing with ourselves in our life. That sounded bad, but that's not how I mean it. So anyway, here you are, you're playing tetherball of life. When we are not avoiding things, we have a nice volley happening, okay? So the ball's coming around, we can hit it from this side, it's coming back around, we can hit it back from this side. We have good momentum happening, right? We might miss it sometimes, might have to dodge it, we miscounted, whatever. Now, when you play the avoidance game, I want you to picture yourself taking that ball and hitting it as hard as you can because you're like, I just want this thing out of here, gone. What happens is, because it's on a rope, it wraps all the way around the pole. And then if you hit it hard enough that first time, it comes and it unwinds, just like if you wind up a swing, right? And it unwinds and unwinds so quickly, and it comes right back. And I like to say it comes back even harder and even stronger than when you first sent it out. So it's like, think of like a tsunami, right? Like everything, when you avoid them, they come back so much bigger and so much worse than what they were in the beginning. So even though something feels uncomfortable, even though you might not like the idea of addressing something like straight on, that's the advice, is like, be in a place where you can be vulnerable, right? You can be open, you can be neutral, and like, be ready, not even ready, I don't like that word, be willing to give yourself the opportunity to grow, right? It's all it takes is a willingness. And like Carla said, a choice, which is a choice, being willing versus unwilling, right?
Right. Right. Because otherwise you have stuff like I would have people, and my clients have told me the same thing, that would call me strong, because they will. If you avoid and then something just blows up and then you're strong, that's what people see. And then the strength, and eventually you feel weak, but the expectation of yourself and others is for you to be strong, because you have they think you're facing it and you're not. It's completely avoidance. And it takes all of your energy instead of taking the feedback. Okay, what's going on? What is this really? What is this beyond the big, huge event? Because say you're in a relationship and you continuously avoid being vulnerable, like Shanda said, and talking to somebody about your perception, what they're saying. Key thing is your perception, because how they said it may trigger you and you hear it totally differently than what their meaning was. And when you're vulnerable, when you're open and you don't avoid, you have this gift. It's a gift.
Yes.
To interact with somebody and say, this is what I think and feel, this is how I perceive, and don't go at them as you did this,
Right.
because that's not gonna, then both of you guys are gonna have your guards up back and forth. But if you go in vulnerable and say, hey, I'm not sure how you meant this is how I perceived it, that's where the backhanded comments that Shanda was talking about, that we take it as that somebody could truly be complimenting you. This is how I saw it. This is how it came across to me. And they can say, oh, no, that's not. And so then you can be like, okay, why do I take what they said? This is their meaning. This is what they were giving me as a gift. And I took it as this. Why? Where is this coming up in my life with other relationships as well? Because nothing is just one relationship. The feedback you get in one relationship is most likely the things that you're having a hard time with happens in other relationships.
It could look different, right? It might
Yes, absolutely.
as something different, but absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. It can look different in so many different ways, and we will take it differently from one person than the other.
Yes.
The person that we feel most vulnerable with, we are more likely to like be super like triggered by them saying a thing that somebody else could have said that we would just brush off, because their opinion does not rock our center like this person's does.
Right.
So if you take it as neutral, do we know that can be difficult? Absolutely. That's why I said sometimes step away and not avoid. Do not avoid. Center yourself and go back. If you step away, do not decide that's okay, it seems fine, and go away.
Right.
Come back to it.
Write it
Come
down
back to it.
somewhere if you even have to, and journal about it, right?
Yes, exactly. And then come back to somebody without, like I said, you can't go, you did this to me. You have to go, hey, listen, I perceive this as,
Yeah.
because it's our filters that gave us what we have, which are not their filters, by the way. We all have our own.
Yeah. And the interesting thing too is this, when you do, and if you do step away, which will likely happen at some point, right, to process, you're not going to find any solution up here.
Yep.
Stewing, mulling, reliving, wondering, question, making meaning, because it is from a place of bias, right? So you really, if you want to move past, say it's something that's like, maybe you had a what's the word, conflict, right? You had a conflict with your best friend. The only way to move past that is to talk to that person about the experience. And again, like Carla said, not from a place of blame, from a place of wanting to understand the other person, from a place of compassion,
Yes.
right? So if we hold the belief, like, here's a new paradigm for you to try, and people who are listening, right? And feel free to drop your comments for us as well and let us know, what's coming up for you. Maybe this is a really challenging topic for you. Let us know in the comments, okay? But what if this could be a new paradigm that we live by? That if this, asking yourself the question, if this isn't negative, how can this add value to my life, right? If I am choosing not to perceive this as something that is negative, what value or what opportunity is here instead, right? Again, so it's looking for the lesson in the feedback from a place of neutrality for your own growth, and so that we stop beating ourselves up about the silliest things, because that is what we do and we are so good at it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And coming to the table with love and compassion for the other person and ourselves, both ways.
Oh yeah.
Like Shanda was saying, the grace. Don't beat yourself up. And even if you've avoided it before, if you're like, okay, this has come up, it hasn't recently, but I'm still spinning it in my head, come to somebody and maybe they will say, like, they may not even, sometimes people have no idea what you're talking about, because for them there was no energy attached to it, but you have attached energy. And as long as you keep spinning things in your head and trying to create the solution, right, in your head, I mean, we have all these, that's where anxiety comes from. All of that is, we're putting energy in this space because we just want to solve it.
Right.
We want to solve it.
But we're still, the problem about it too in our brain, which is why it causes so much pain and grief, is that we're still only adding one ingredient,
Yes.
one piece of the puzzle over and over and over. We just keep, again, looking for that same proof to validate how we're feeling. So there's no growth in that situation. That is why you need the other side of the puzzle, the other side of the equation, whatever you want to call it, the other ingredient, right? Yeah.
Yes. So you have to be open. That's the point, is you have to be open to the other ingredients and being okay with it not validating you. And that does not mean you're wrong. Just because something didn't validate what you thought did not make you wrong. Like I said, the love and compassion.
Yes.
You could be helping somebody else grow by bringing something up,
You are.
you know,
Yeah.
and maybe it could be their communication that's
Yeah.
off, not just yours, but they don't know if you don't give them feedback. It is a two-way street. Don't just be willing to take it in, but be willing to, with love and compassion, give feedback to your loved ones.
Yes. From a place of not being attached to an outcome either.
Yes, yes.
Right? So, like, we don't give feedback to try and get somewhere or make somebody do something or
No,
change somebody. That
no
is not what we do.
manipulations.
Yeah, we don't give feedback for that reason, right? Again, feedback is so that they can maybe gain new insight into areas for their growth, just like it's an area for your growth too.
Right,
Right.
right.
So we're not attached to creating an outcome. We want solution, which is to move forward in whatever way that is, right? We want resolve, but it doesn't happen in your brain, and it
No.
can't happen without the other party or parties involved, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, if you feel alone, if you feel unheard, any of that stuff, you can say that to somebody, but that does not give them the feedback as to why in your interactions you feel that way. Your feeling is your feeling. Okay. And your feeling does not equal what really is going on,
Yeah, they're not
first off.
creating it, right? They're not doing it to you. They're not creating
And
it for you.
one of the things I hate to hear the most, they made me feel, nobody made you feel anything. And so to come from, I feel this, I feel that, to, okay, I need this because I'm not receiving this. I feel this way, because they can't read your mind. Nobody can. I think I've said before, one of the very first things my boyfriend told me when we started dating is, I'm not thinking anything when you think I am thinking something.
Yeah.
And we make that up. And he said, also, I cannot read your mind. So if if you think I'm going to take hints, I'm not. Be very clear, honest, and blunt about what you need, what you think, because I cannot guess.
And rightfully so. We shouldn't put people in a position to need to guess and
Right.
need to solve a puzzle or a riddle to understand what we're experiencing and how we're feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that that is one of our challenges as society, is that that is kind of what we create. We create these expectations that people should know, or should be able to figure it out, or should be able to put the pieces together. And it's like, no, let's just remove that completely, and let's be forthcoming with this information so that we can connect on a deeper level and have more love and compassion for everybody and anybody.
Right. And so if we provide feedback and not from a you make me,
Right. It's your fault.
yes, you've done this, because then it's shut down and it's not going to be received. It's like telling somebody to put the wall up, and because you're going to throw all this stuff at them. But if you come from this compassionate, loving space and say, listen, here's the information. I don't know what your perception of it is. This is what's coming up for me. This is they they have no shot at understanding what your needs are if you don't say it. That's feedback too. You can't hope that somebody else feels exactly the same way you do about all these things. They are not the same person as you. They did not have the same experiences as you that created all the filters that you have, just like the reverse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and everybody has, like you said, their own unique experience, but that is also really important to understand, that we are all individuals. And again, that is what enhances our growth. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll learn things from you that I would never learn on my own,
Right.
as I'm not wired the same way that you are. So being unique and individual, and our own person with our own thoughts, feelings, and experiences is a beautiful thing, right? You guys, like, don't take this to be like, oh my gosh, this is daunting and awful and ugh. No, this is a beautiful thing. This is how we grow and learn, and why we keep exceeding, right, as a society. In some ways, there's areas where we still have yet to grow, but in some areas we've advanced quite far, right,
Right.
in a little amount of time. So yeah, I mean,
And seeing that, being grateful, that's why we do the gratitude thing, is to see, like, where were you like a year ago versus now, and just really like appreciating it, and knowing that the other person is there to, like, together, the creations you can do and the growth that can happen together. It's not all about this person's going to give me everything I need to feel whole, because nobody can do that. You are the one who gets to make you feel whole.
yeah,
But the dance together is the beauty, where the joy and the bliss come from. As long as you are sharing and not like withholding, which is the avoiding that we were talking about, what I was doing. I was just surviving in life. And so Shanda will will back me on this. I'm sure you will draw in clients that are having the same stuff that happened to you, especially if you have not chosen to confront that yourself. And so I would bring in clients that were avoiding their same thing, and life is happening to me. And you can have as many tools as you want. I don't care how many tools you have. If you don't use them, they will not
Work.
support your growth.
Yeah.
And so and you see this over and over again, and people will take program after program after program, but they are not the feedback we're talking about. You're not receiving your feedback. So if you continuously do things and then you just move on to the next, but it feels like you're not getting anywhere, that means you are in some way, shape, or form not taking in your feedback and growing from it.
Yeah, and I mean, if like even going back to what you said about doing like the kind of life audit, right? Like looking at where you were a year ago. If you haven't grown in some way, then it's like, okay, hang on a second. Why am I choosing to stay stuck here or stagnant? Why am I not moving? Why am I not growing and learning, right? We want to be shifting and shaking all the time. I know Carla and I are committed to that, right? It's like committed to taking more courses and learning new things, but also implementing them into our own life and then sharing it with the world too, right? And speaking of what I touched on earlier around we're all unique and we can all learn from each other. That's why Carl and I are doing this, because two brains are better than one. We get to create a deeper conversation together than we could on our own, right? So we get to add more value having a conversation together than we would alone, in a sense, right? So it's really powerful. And like, I want to just kind of plant this seed in your brains. What if every person we encounter is a catalyst for your growth?
Right.
If we could hold a paradigm like that, your life would change. I want to even say in an instant, because then you're looking at everything, every opportunity, every situation, circumstance, person as a gift,
Right.
right? As opportunity. And there's so much gratitude behind that when we give thanks to what we have in our life and what comes into our life, right? What we call in, what we create. Gratitude is like, I swear, when you can live from a place of gratitude, it is extremely hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is extremely hard to hold on to feelings like anger, resentment, fear, frustration, any of those low vibrations. It's hard. It's a challenge to hang on to that, because you're just like, no, like life's good, right?
Right.
And gratitude doesn't have to be, oh, I live in a mansion. It could be, I have a warm roof over my head. I have food in the fridge. I got to go for a walk today. Like whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be extravagant, but gratitude, it literally is everywhere around you. You just have to look for it.
Right. Right. And it opens you up for more,
Yeah.
because the life audit thing I'm talking about is if you excuse me, if you catch yourself, your day is I wake up, I just have to get through work. I just have to get through this. I just have to get through the week till the weekend. If that's the way your life is, if it's that is all feedback. That is all feedback. Is that what you want your life to be? And that is not for anybody else to decide but you. But if you look at each of these things, okay, this is what's coming up for me. What am I going to do with this? What do I want differently? How do I want my life to look in the next month, the next 6 months, the next year, the next 10 years? And what things, besides the things I'm dreading, what are the things I really enjoy about my life? What are the things I'm super grateful for?
Yeah.
Yeah, a life audit is not about just picking out the bad things. It's also like, what is working for me? That's important, because most likely because we are wired to notice the negative. It's a survival mechanism. And so which is why more likely than not, unless we're looking for validation, we will glom onto what we perceive as criticism before we ever hear somebody compliment us. So look at, if you're going to audit, look at your life not only from what's not working, but what is working, so that you can have that gratitude. Otherwise, you're going to glom onto this isn't working, and you're going to make it all about these negative things and how one thing is the answer
Right.
to this.
Well, how, and I mean, what's coming up for me right now, I love that you're sharing this, because how conducive to living a healthy life and life that you want is it to just look at one side once again,
Right.
focusing on what's not working, or that where your challenges or your obstacles are, or maybe your weaknesses. It's,
Mm-hmm.
give yourself a fair chance, like a running shot here, and look at what is going well for you and what your strengths are, and play on those as you develop the things that could use a little bit more attention, right?
Right. And then it becomes about growth instead of about solving a problem.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then you've made things really about it, turned it into a problem, which is the story. It's all the story making. When something's a problem, this is the solution. When really it's all just feedback and growth and this most magical life that we can have as we're open to it.
Absolutely. I love it. Be solution focused as opposed to problem focused, right? And
Yes.
again, solution focused is forward thinking. It comes from the future. It comes from being resourceful. Problem focused is from the past. And if you listen to any of our episodes, you will already know that we cannot create anything new by looking to the past for the answers. They aren't there. All you're going to get is more of the same. Okay. So let's face forward and be focused on our future, right? While creating a positive impact in our lives and other people's lives through providing that genuine feedback and being open to receiving it as well, right? It's equally as important. If you're going to provide feedback, I really hope that you can allow yourself to open up to receive it as well, because it truly
Right.
is a gift both ways.
Right. Right. And just, I mean, how great is it that somebody loves you enough to provide you feedback?
Right. If
You
we're
know,
if we're keeping the paradigm in mind that every person or every situation is a catalyst to our growth, it's like, how can you not find gratitude in them offering you that gift that they're sharing?
right.
We can't see our
Because
faces, right? We can't see them.
right. Because if we as if we were working with clients and we just gave them all these things that just pep them up and never gave them feedback that helped them grow, they wouldn't they won't grow, right? You have to, the same with Shanda and I. Shanda and I do not come to each other to just have somebody just tell us we're right, because it's not going to happen. We will challenge each other. We will say, have you thought of it this way? How could you change the story you have going on in your head, which is exactly what we do with our clients? How could you think of this in a different way? Because if you want growth, you have to do that. You have to be open to change. Feedback is to help you with change. It is not to keep you where you are. It's not to cage you. It's to give you freedom.
Feedback is freedom. Hey, that's a
Mm-hmm.
good bumper sticker. I can see them already.
They're going to be like, what's feedback?
I love it. So good. Such a great conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to share? Any more points?
I I think we covered a lot of ground here today, and again, it's I think the one thing that I'll reiterate, because it's on the tip of my tongue, is those conversations, those connected conversations that you have with these people is the way forward, right? That is the solution. It's not disconnecting from people or yourself, it's reconnecting. That is forward. So if you want to move forward, let's start reconnecting.
Right, right. Because true connected conversations have feedback in them,
And they're
period.
healing, and they're healing,
Yes.
right?
And
They
so, That's why we bring it up, because they're healing. If you want to heal relationships, then you have to be open to feedback and open to giving feedback from a neutral position.
Yeah.
And just know that if somebody has a reaction, that has to do with their own stuff, just like yours does. We do not, I would avoid wording something in a certain way or even giving feedback because I did not want somebody else to feel bad. When really, like I was just saying, that's why I will go to Shanda with the toughest things, because we have the kind of a relationship where I know she is not afraid to say something that somebody else would say that would hurt my feelings.
Right.
And if they hurt my feelings, I do not look at Shanda and go, oh, I look at Shanda and go, okay, why is this triggering me? And thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I know that first of all, I would be doing you a disservice by not helping,
Right.
supporting you. Don't want to use the word help, supporting you in that way. And I see you, like I see my clients too. I see everybody at their highest capability. So I know that you can figure it out. I know you can do it. I know all those things. Right. And so I get to, sometimes it's just like asking a question in a different way, right? To
Right.
present new opportunity. It's fascinating. And you guys who are listening, if you guys need support around more details like how to have this type of conversation or what that might
Right.
look like, reach out to us. We will support you through that. We will help you learn how to have these connected conversations, these healing conversations that we're talking about.
Right, right. Absolutely. So that's what I wanted to end with, is like, really, it's connected conversations isn't about ego boosting. It is truly about growth and love.
Yeah,
Truly having compassion for yourself and the other person. So I am complete if you are.
absolutely.
This has been an exciting conversation, and we want to thank you guys for tuning into our channel, From Head to Heart and Home, with Shanda and Carla. So if you enjoyed our conversation, make sure to click down on our subscribe button so you can get all the notifications, and, comment. We love interaction. Absolutely. If you have questions, even if you just want to comment, we love to hear what your thoughts are, because that's what we're here for. We're not here just to let you hear what we have to say. We want interaction. We love to be connected. So be sure to tune in next week to be part of our authentic, connected conversation. Bye.